The Hunchback of Notre Dame has always been a black sheep in Disney's lineup of animated movies. With its gothic Gregorian choirs, pervy villains, wisecracking gargoyle sidekicks, and themes of lust, religion, genocide, and social justice, you won't find it as widely celebrated by the company and its fans compared to others like The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, and Frozen. Yet despite that, like its more popular counterparts, among others, Hunchback ended up getting the stage musical treatment. It played off Broadway, and even though it was receiving positive reviews, and in my opinion being Tony Award worthy, and having Disney money behind it, it ended up not getting picked up for Broadway, a place where so many of their stage musicals have thrived. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, picking apart the history and production of this musical, what it changes and how it actually improves upon its source material, as well as get to the bottom of how in the hellfire it didn't get the prestigious label of being a Broadway production. There's two different versions of this musical since it was performed at two different locations. Both are nearly identical to each other, but I'll mainly be following the Paper Mill Playhouse one since the slime tutorial is in better quality. But I will be pointing out the differences between it and the La Jolla Playhouse. So since the animated movie just had its 30th anniversary, get ready for this Defunctland-esque deep dive as we explore However, before we get to the musical itself, we must ask, who created these predecessors?
Who?
What are their differences?
What?
How did it eventually come into existence?
How?
Hush.
Oh.
And Olivia will tell you, it is a tale of a man who created the story in the first place. Victor Marie Hugo was born in Besançon, France in 1802, where I don't actually mean that far, let's skip ahead to the 1990s. After Disney released their animated adaptation of Hugo's novel Notre Dame de Paris, or The Hunchback of Notre Dame, on June 21st, 1996, the first stage adaptations would premiere at both Disneyland and the former Disney MGM studios at Disney World on that same day. Disneyland's was titled The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Festival of Fools, and ran from that day in 1996 to April 1998, while Disney World's was The Hunchback of Notre Dame, a musical adventure, and ran longer from June 1996 all the way to September 28, 2002. Both were a half-hour long, where a musical adventure played as a live Wikipedia summary of the movie, similar to the Aladdin and Frozen stage shows at California Adventure, with Clopin doing his usual Bells of Notre Dame spiel with some actually pretty remarkable puppetry. Yeah, it may be a 30-minute reenactment of the movie, gargoyles and all.
Like one moment with a boy, if it's alright with you!
And you can definitely feel it in the pacing, but it's genuinely pretty impressive on a technical level, including the one and only appearance of Esmeralda's goat Jolly in any of these stage adaptations. However, they did remove Hellfire, which is, a crime, because we gotta keep a guy like you in, right? Meanwhile, the Festival of Fools show in Disneyland was a lot different. The stage is massive, where actors jump and swing all over the place, and by the looks of it, it had much larger seating. It's also more meta, with audience interactions and various cast members volunteering to play different characters like Esmeralda, Phoebus, and Frollo.
That brings us to our villain. Who can play the Minister of Justice, Von Frollo?
Yes, I'll play Frollo.
Until a mysterious figure comes on stage to be the director, and it's revealed to be Clopin himself. The show is more of a loose highlight reel by presenting various musical numbers and scenes out of order, with Clopin interjecting with jokes here and there.
Quasimodo, ugly on the outside, yet beautiful within.
There's also no gargoyles. Yay! I'm something of a California girl myself, and I unfortunately didn't get the chance to see the Disneyland show. Seeing how it ended in 1998 and I was born in 2003, I just missed it. Damn. However, I've been on its burial ground many a time, because when it ended, its lifeless husk eventually got gutted and was reconstructed to become Galaxy's Edge, because of course it did.
Unfortunately, when it comes to Hunchback rep, at least at Disneyland, this is about all we have. Absolute cinema.
Meanwhile, in Germany, the Berlin Theater adapted the movie to a proper stage musical, with the book, aka script, written by James Lapine, who wrote a number of Stephen Sondheim musicals like Into the Woods and Sunday in the Park with George. This was Berlin's second option to adapt a Disney movie, since negotiations to adapt a German version of The Lion King fell through, which at this point was already a smash hit on Broadway and would have been a safe bet for success, while Hunchback was more of a financial gamble. It was rehearsed in English, then in German for realsies, then premiered in 1999 as Der Glöckner von Notre Dame, and was the first Disney musical to do so outside the US. Despite the risk, it ended up becoming one of Berlin's longest-running musicals with an estimated 1.4 million audience members over the course of 1,204 performances. All in one theater, mind you. The show ended in 2002, and oh my gosh, I missed it again. Ugh. It sticks pretty closely to the movie, but it does add a bunch of new songs, most of which get carried over to the US productions. Unfortunately, the gargoyles haven't been shaken off yet, and while they aren't as obnoxious, they're still here to lighten the tone and sing A Guy Like You. Ugh. Anyway, skip ahead to 2014, where the first major North American production premiered at the La Jolla Playhouse in San Diego, California, with an unfortunately much more limited run, going from October 28th to December 7th. And seeing how this came out just 2 years before I fell head over heels for the movie, I think the universe just loves to torture me. It also played at the Paper Mill Playhouse in New Jersey from March 4th to April 5th, 2015, with almost the exact same cast and some tweaks in the story and musical numbers. Both were directed by Scott Schwartz, the son of the iconic lyricist Stephen Schwartz, who worked on the movie and musical songs, and if you watched my Prince of Egypt musical review, you'd know he also directed that. However, Hunchback is miles better, so we're in good hands here. Since we unfortunately don't have a pro shot of this musical, that means the audio we're dealing with is not the greatest, so I put closed captions on this video so everyone can better understand what's happening on stage. So let's not wait any longer and let's dive into this awesome musical, shall we? The musical begins with the Gregorian-style chant Olim, same as the movie. As the ensemble and choir members take their places, we get that banger of an opening. We get introduced to the narrator and leader of the Romani people, Clopin, played by Eric Leiberman, as he sings about the glory of the bells of Notre Dame. I especially love the way he sings that bells of Notre Dame, because I swear you can hear him smiling while he says it.
To the bells of Notre Dame.
That was all I needed to let me know this guy definitely matches Paul Candel's charisma and singing ability. So we have Clopin, but also some of the ensemble members and even Phoebus and Esmeralda singing lyrics from the first verse, which is a really nice addition. It feels somewhat meta, like we're the Hunchback of Notre Dame players. Welcome to the story we're about to tell. Anyway, here's our first major change from the movie. The Bells of Notre Dame musical number in the movie and Berlin production tell the story of Quasimodo's parents sneaking into Paris, getting caught by Frollo killing Quasi's mother, him almost drowning Quasi until he takes him in as his own, while the musical gives us an entire backstory to Frollo. He and his brother Jehan, played by Patrick Page and Jeremy Stoll respectively, grew up in Notre Dame, and while Frollo was vigilant in following the church's orders, Jehan would frequently go out and party. I love this lyric, as Jehan grew more wild and defied and defiled all the laws. You got all those I sounds in wild, defied, and defiled, and it scratches an itch in my brain. It's great. Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz, you mad geniuses you. This comes to a head where Jehan brings a Romani woman named Florica, played by Samantha Maisel, as a birthday gift to Frollo.
I can see you want to. I can see it in your eyes. Oh, I can feel it too! Stop!
If you haven't picked up on it yet, this ain't your grandma's Disney musical. Seriously, it's surprising how this adaptation is somehow even more mature than the movie. Surprising, but very welcome. Also, now would probably be a good time to point out that the story of the Hunchback of Notre Dame heavily uses a term that is generally considered to be a racial slur used against Romani people, and the musical unfortunately is no different. Yes, this takes place in 1482 and people would have used the word then, but still, especially because so many people use that word today, not knowing it's a pejorative term. Just wanted to point that out. Anyway, Jehan gets kicked out of the church, so he and Florica leave. Meanwhile, Frollo becomes the Archdeacon of Notre Dame, going back to the original title he had in the novel. He was a judge in the movie since Disney didn't want to get religious people upset about painting a member of the church as the bad guy. I'm Christian and I'm aware of how many creeps love preaching love thy neighbor and stuff. Too bad that means they had to get rid of his comically large hat. Anyway, years later, Frollo reunites with the sick Jehan, and he reveals Florica died 6 weeks earlier, as well as that he's got a baby.
Oh, a monster.
That's a terrible thing to say to a baby.
In his dying breath, Jehan asks Frollo to take care of him. I really wish he went bleh. Frollo frantically goes back to the cathedral and makes the decision to raise the baby. He doesn't kill anyone in this scene. Yay! The ensemble reveals he named the child Quasimodo, which they say means half-formed, which is somewhat true, but not literally. There is Quasimodo Sunday, which is the Sunday following Easter, and in the original novel, that's the day Frollo found him abandoned on the steps of Notre Dame. And quasi is a prefix to describe something as almost but not complete. According to Victor Hugo, Frollo named him Quasimodo, either because he wanted to indicate thereby the day on which he had found him, or because he wanted the name to typify just how incomplete and half-finished the poor little creature was. It's better than the Prince of Egypt musical where they blatantly spread misinformation and say the name Moses means deliverance. It's also really interesting that this is the only Hunchback adaptation I've seen where Quasi is Frollo's biological nephew instead of just being his adoptive son, so it makes their dynamic all the more fascinating. This is where we get Quasimodo himself, played by Michael Arden, as he asks the audience the main thesis of the story.
What makes a monster and what makes a man?
He transforms into a monster before our very eyes as he puts black paint on his face, and Frollo and an ensemble member helps him put his hunchback costume on. I read somewhere that Frollo putting this on Quasimodo is symbolic of him forcing the ideology that his disability is a burden, quite literally putting the weight on his shoulders, and I think that's so genius. But there we have it, the bells of Notre Dame. I personally prefer the movie version, since Frollo having the audacity to kill Quasimodo's mother, attempting to drown baby Quasi, and especially that choir. And Paul Candel's final note. Are more, for lack of a better word, cinematic. But the musical version does a great job standing on its own 2 feet by fleshing out Frollo's backstory and giving us its own nuggets of moments to appreciate.
To the bells of Notre Dame.
Meanwhile, now we're officially introduced to Quasi, who dreams of one day stepping outside the cathedral and walking amongst the people of Paris, particularly during the Festival of Fools, which is happening today. And you want to know something really cool? They got rid of the wisecracking gargoyles! Yippee! I love Hunchback with all my heart. It's my favorite Disney movie and it's meant so much to me for almost half my life, but this is a major improvement. They were there in the Berlin production where they were renamed Charles, Antoine, and Loney, and thankfully they're nowhere near as obnoxious as Hugo, Victor, and Laverne were in the movie, but their presence is there to lighten the tone, and I prefer how the US productions handle them as they are now the very stone saints adorning Notre Dame. Quasimodo does still talk to them since he's mostly been by himself for the past 20 years, but they act more like a Greek chorus in his own consciousness as he struggles to make up his mind about asking Frollo to join the Feast of Fools.
Last year he said, someday, maybe.
He always says someday, never today.
It was this watch for this video when I realized that idea gets brought back way later in the finale in one of my favorite lyrics, but we'll get there. And yes, they are most definitely a part of Quasimodo's imagination, unlike the movie where it seems that way for most of it until they start directly participating in the finale. Anyway, Frollo comes in to give Quasi food, and after he sees the people below begin celebrating the Feast of Fools and rants about their depraved actions of singing and dancing, he reveals that Romani people are exiled and even killed in other places, but Paris has become their sanctuary. They're not allowed to sing and dance on the streets most of the year, so that's why the Feast of Fools is such a major celebration in the city. This is probably due to him being a high-ranking member of the church in this adaptation, because no, he does not commit genocide unlike his movie counterpart, who you could say played the role of judge and executioner. That doesn't make him any less racist, though. Great.
How it fills me with disgust to walk amongst them, yet I must.
This brief number isn't on the soundtrack, but it reuses a melody from the Bells of Notre Dame, so that's kinda neat. It leads to Quasi asking if he can join him to the festival, and we get the number out there, with Frollo first ordering him to stay in here. Personally, I much prefer the movie's version of Frollo's part because I absolutely adore Tony J's entire performance, while Patrick Page's singing has too much vibrato for my taste.
These are crimes for which the world shows little pity.
These are crimes for which the world shows little pity.
That might be slander, I don't know, and I'm sorry. I know he's in Hades Town and I'm waiting until the Pro Shot comes out to watch and listen to it for the first time, so maybe I'll completely eat my words then, who knows. So while I'm not exactly a fan of Patrick Page singing as Frollo, I can't say the same thing about Michael Arden as Quasimodo. He might just be the strongest vocalist in the cast, and with him being the Hunchback of Notre Dame, one might say that's pretty important. Tom Hulce is great as Quasi, don't get me wrong. But the strength in Arden's voice is palpable, and he gets even better later, just you wait. Though a lot of the time he makes Quasi sound British, and I'm not really sure why.
My life, I wonder how it feels to pass a day.
If you want another really great version of Out There, I highly recommend the demo sung by the one and only Menken. It features alternate lyrics from Frollo and early concept art to show executives and shareholders the feeling the directors were aiming for with the movie. Menken isn't a trained singer or anything, but I do really like it, especially with how he sings "Give Me One Day Out There" in the first chorus. Anyway, check out the whole thing, I put the link in the description. We don't get special features like this anymore and it sucks. We used to be a proper country. Anyway, Quasimodo decides to leave the bell tower for the very first time and it immediately leads to topsy-turvy. We get a tiny Out There reprise from Quasi as he's now out here, which is a cool addition. And here we get Clopin, now officially a character within the story. The first thing he does is steal money from a guy, which we never see a Romani person do in the movie, so the musical is playing into one of, if not their biggest stereotype, which is, yikes. But speaking on Eric Leiberman's performance itself, it's still really enjoyable to watch. He's got this fun jacket for the Feast of Fools that looks like if Joseph's coat of many colors and Sloane's fringe jacket from Ferris Bueller's Day Off had a love child.
Scurvy days are extra scurvy on the 6th of January.
The 6th of what now? Only someone like Steven Schwartz can change January to January and make it work. Unlike the movie, the topsy-turvy musical number is split into two parts in order to introduce Phoebus, played by Andrew Szymanski. Hunchback takes a page out of the Lion King musical's book, literally, where it builds a song around an instrumental motif from the movie. Where the Lion King creates Nella's ballad Shadowland from the track This Land, they take Phoebus's leitmotif from the movie and turn it into his introductory song Rest and Recreation.
Boys at the front, give a man a zest.
This characterization also sticks closer to his novel counterpart, where he's very much a womanizer, basically a medieval Barney Stinson, and they cut this line from the La Jolla production.
You ladies.
Paris, just back from the front.
And admiring both the backs and the fronts.
Including this part. Crazy. They also severely cut out Phoebus's wingman, who I guess would be Ted, named Frederic, but he's a very minor role, so it's not the end of the world or anything. There's this one bit where Phoebus throws a wine glass and one of the ensemble members catches it, and it looks effortless in both versions. I wonder how many times they had to rehearse that. And in the movie, while it's stated Phoebus is returning from war to help Frollo, and it's easily glossed over, in this version it's explicitly stated his experiences haunt him, with such vivid lyrics like,
The air filled with the stench of bodies in a trench. The clotting blood and rotting bones of dead and dying men.
He meets up with Frollo and we get this delightfully awkward moment.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve you, Lord. Glad to hear it.
And he agrees there is no time for rest and recreation as he has to act as law enforcement against the Romani people. This is where we get the bona fide banger musical number, Rhythm of the Tambourine, the introductory song for Esmeralda, a newcomer to Paris played by Sierra Renee. I love the gray tearaway robe as it reveals her gorgeous red dress, which I prefer over La Jolla's production where she's just behind a curtain Clopin rips away. I just love the costume design for this musical in general. It feels very grounded and authentic compared to the Disney theme park shows where they stick so close to the movie they just scream costumey. There's not very much high quality footage of Hunchback of Notre Dame, so I can't get an amazing look at it, but from what little I've seen, I still prefer the US productions. Esmeralda's underbust corset during the last chunk of the finale is a bit of a stretch, but whatever. And I think it goes without saying, it looks so much better than the Prince of Egypt's. Seriously, I cannot get over that crow headpiece and mesh tank top. We get references to characters from the original novel, Jacques and Pierre, as Esmeralda asks them to see her dance. There's actually two Jacques in the novel, one of them and the other helps the Parisians select the King of Fools, named the Fool's Pope in the novel, where Pierre was yet another love interest for Esmeralda, and she actually marries him out of pity to save his life at one point. He's a little twerp anyway, I'm glad a lot of adaptations got rid of him. Esmeralda sings, "Come see me dance, hey, what can it hurt, it's just a dance to the rhythm of the tambourine," which is very funny because it's this exact dance that changes the trajectory of the lives of our three male leads. Speaking of which, she dances with scarves and throws one to Frollo, but during the bridge there's seamlessly replaced with ones that aren't free-flowing, so it genuinely looks like she's dancing in slow-mo in real time. It's so cool. And during that bridge, Quasimodo, Phoebus, and Frollo all sing as a trio, and we get some more lyrical genius that gives us insight into all their characters. Phoebus is staged in between Quasi and Frollo, since the two of them are polar opposite in their infatuation with Esmeralda. Quasi puts her on a pedestal and Frollo lusts after her, while Phoebus has genuine interest in her. Frollo thinks she dances like the devil, since he's denying the promiscuous feelings he's beginning to have towards her, and Phoebus sings she dances like an angel, which is intended to be taken metaphorically, meaning she dances gracefully, while Quasi echoes the an angel part, meaning he literally views her as an angel, and even refers to her as one during Heaven's Light later on. Phoebus continues singing she dances with such fire, again meant metaphorically since he acknowledges and admires her passion, while Frollo echoes the such fire since he's associating her to be satanic and demonic. This whole thing lasts 20 seconds, but bro, it's so amazing. Yes, Phoebus is established to be a womanizer, but the more he interacts with Esmeralda and her plight, the more his mindset changes and character arc grows. I haven't even talked about Sierra Renee's performance so far. She's spectacular. She's got great moves, and I love the way she yells Butcher Man on stage compared to her more straight delivery on the cast recording.
Hey, Butcher Man, I see you admire. Hey, Butcher Man, I see you admire.
However, I do miss the perfect split she did in the La Jolla production. Overall, it's such a catchy song, and it's one of the best numbers, not just of the originals, but all the songs in general. It perfectly captures Esmeralda's feisty yet infectious energy and spirit, and I think would have made for such a fun sequence in the movie if it had existed then. The song ends, and Paper Mill adds a small scene with Clopin and Esmeralda, and even though he welcomes her to Paris, he takes most of her earnings. Now it's time to crown the ugliest face in Paris as the King of Fools as we get to the second half of Topsy Turvy. In the movie, Esmeralda believes Quasi's wearing a mask, so she invites him on stage and doesn't know it's his actual face until she yanks on the poor guy's head and has the realization the same time as everyone else. In the musical, she gets frightened immediately, but invites him on stage so he can take advantage of his appearance. With the Parisians being disgusted by him and knowing he's Frollo's pet, they mock both of them, and in the La Jolla production, Frollo briefly sings about how embarrassed he feels.
Listen to their cheers and laughter.
But I think the show works better without it, so they removed it for Paper Mill. Clopin comes in saying, well, we did find the ugliest face in Paris, right? He kicks off the final chorus of Topsy Turvy, but it's in a much different approach than the movie. The movie resumes the fast-paced tempo, but the musical slowly builds up to the crescendo since he's saving face and slowly but surely persuading the Parisians. In movie, Esmeralda quickly disappears from the rest of the musical number to go change, while musical Esmeralda stays on stage, but you can clearly see she's ridden with guilt about pulling Quasi on stage, since everyone is celebrating him for his ugliness and not him as a human being, but you can still see her plaster on a fake smile anyway. This is her first Feast of Fools after all, and it's understandable she wouldn't be properly prepared. But you can see Quasi doesn't really comprehend what's going on and is just happy to be part of the festivities, and oh, just look at him. However, that doesn't last long, as they start genuinely ridiculing and even torturing him, and in the movie it comes off as pretty sporadic, but the ensemble members explain they've never seen a person this ugly, and it drove their little 15th century peasant brains wild. Esmeralda goes out to stop them whipping him, and even with Clopin pulling her back, she succeeds. They recreate a notable scene from the book where she gives him water and sets him free, and instead of Frollo confronting her, it's the townspeople who do it.
What are you doing? You're ruining all our fun!
I will admit this is a more believable reaction compared to the movie where they suddenly cheer her on when she stands up to Frollo and evades arrest. Also, when she disappears, she actually disappears, and there's no drawn-out cartoony chase sequence that causes tone whiplash. Another great improvement on the movie. I like Phoebus' little kick to check to see if the pot will explode again. What a goof. We get another original song, Into Notre Dame, as Frollo shames Quasimodo for disobeying him and orders him to go back into the cathedral. It uses the Out There melody, which is similar to the movie where it's a wildly reorchestrated version of the song.
I will never disobey you again.
You see, you don't belong with normal men.
They're just normal men. They're just innocent men. We also deliberately see Frollo take one of Esmeralda's scarves and stash it What the hey, dude? I genuinely don't know which one's creepier, this or when he takes it out of his robe during Hellfire in the movie. Like, is it creepier that we see him make the conscious choice to take it for himself, or to have the realization he's had it this entire time later? After Quasi goes back in, Esmeralda follows him to apologize, but is taken aback by the beauty of the cathedral since it's her first time inside of it. Frollo spots her and thankfully doesn't sexually harass her, but Esmeralda gets the upper hand on him.
You also deny possessing black magic.
If I had the power of magic, why wouldn't I use it to help myself and my people?
You're clever.
So while she doesn't make a fool out of Frollo during the Feast of Fools, she does confront him now. I do love her whole "maybe we crown the wrong fool" quip and her explicitly demanding justice in the movie, but I do like this more intimate conversation where she's able to ask him some hard-hitting questions.
There must be some charity inside you.
And he actually invites Esmeralda to stay in the cathedral. Yeah, he's basically saying,
Get religion.
but she's not trapped inside of it under the laws of sanctuary. This is where we get God Help the Outcasts. It's practically identical to the movie. It's already a wonderful song to begin with, except instead of an instrumental intro, we have a choir singing the Catholic hymn Salve Regina. I was today years old when I found out the name Regina means queen in Latin, and oh my gosh, that's why it's given to Regina George in Mean Girls, because she's the queen bee. Oh! Anyway, they sing the first verse of the hymn as the intro, which is Salve Regina, Marte misericordiae, vita dulciado, et spes nostra salve, artesas priamos rementes et flant, inac lacrimarum vale, which translates to, Hail, Holy Queen, Mother of Mercy, our life, our sweetness, and our hope. To thee do we cry, poor banished children of Eve. To thee do we send up our sighs, mourning and weeping in this valley of tears. It excellently fits in with the theme of what Esmeralda is singing about, since she's asking God to give grace to her people. Since this is her first time in a church, she doesn't know very much about him. Frollo pointed out a crucifix of Jesus off stage, and that's what Esmeralda is gazing upon throughout the song. She asks him if he was once an outcast too, and the answer is yes, he was. Him being on the crucifix is a result of him being outcasted for preaching the word of God. I've always loved the lyric, God help the outcasts or nobody will, and I love how that idea gets expanded upon in the musical later. Her pleas are contrasted with a congregation who ask for fame and wealth, but when they finish, she stands her ground. Even though she leads an unfortunate life, she puts her people first, and that's incredibly selfless. Yeah, I love Esmeralda so much. I named my cat after her, for crying out loud. Both versions of the song are neck and neck in quality, since Heidi Mollenhauer and Ciara Renee sound absolutely heavenly, but I might give the edge to the movie since it's the version I've known longer, and it has the added bonus of giving me some of my favorite shots in all of animation. Of course, it'd be hard to recreate that on the live stage, but I do love the stained glass window in the background. It looks to be probably the Westroads window, since that's the one you see at the front entrance looking outside, and I can only assume she came in that way. I also love the rows and rows of candles from La Jolla. I prefer those over just the congregants standing there holding a single candle like in the paper mill production. When the song ends, Phoebus approaches Esmeralda, but she defends herself and we get the best clip from the two of them carried over from the movie.
Fight almost as well as a man.
Funny, I was gonna say the same thing about you!
I love that Ciara Renee adds a seductive twist to it to mess with him. And here we have, so far, the biggest difference between the La Jolla and Paper Mill productions. The removal of the song In My Life.
In my life, I've seen some things, cruelty and heartlessness.
It uses entirely new instrumentals, unlike earlier brief songs that used pre-existing ones, and it's basically Esmeralda and Phoebus singing about their differing worldviews. Like most of the songs that aren't in the movie, this one came from the Berlin production. And I'll be honest, it's not all that memorable. It's not even on the cast recording, so I think removing it for Paper Mill was for the best. It's cut out entirely, so when Esmeralda hears a thud, she thinks it's Quasimodo, so she starts chasing after him, and we get this great exchange.
Where are you going?
To see that boy!
Why can't you mind your own business?
It has to be somebody's business.
They start getting to know each other, and Quasi tells her the cathedral speaks to him. He punishes himself because he's been conditioned by Frollo to believe it's stupid. Oh, this poor guy! You see how lonely he is, but he's still got a childlike sense to him. Here we get another new song, Top of the World, as Esmeralda admires the view from atop the cathedral while the saints urge Quasimodo to say something to her.
Gazing down from the top of the world.
Anyway, look at my boy Quasi. He is such a goof.
We give 3 cheers to see
He even helps Esmeralda overcome her fear of heights. Oh, how sweet. Ugh, man, I feel like if this did go on Broadway, that shot of the two of them sitting on the railing with their arms outstretched would cement itself in its iconography, like Elphaba's battle cry in Wicked or the chandelier in Phantom of the Opera. After Quasi shows her the pot of hot lead he uses to fix the bells,
That's a surprise tool that can help us later.
Frollo interrupts them and excuses Quasimodo to do chores to talk to Esmeralda alone. However, this is when the creep alert really goes off. He's been racist toward the Romani throughout, so it's not like he's been a likable guy, but this is the first time he makes a direct advance towards Esmeralda, and it's not pretty, where he invites her to stay in the cathedral in more ways than one.
I could instruct you in the Gospels, share with you our Lord's grace. You could come here every day. Maybe perhaps you could stay.
I don't think that would be a good idea.
I kind of prefer Sierra's take in the La Jolla run, where she's more hesitant.
I think that would be a good idea.
Instead of being outright panicky in the paper mill one.
I don't think that would be a good idea.
But I can't blame her. If a creep made moves on me like that, I'd panic too. And probably mace him. Esmeralda retorts she sees the way he looks at her, to which he clutches his pearls, or maybe rosary beads,
How dare you!
and orders her to be thrown out of the church. And if she steps 1 foot inside, she'll be arrested. Again, this is the direct opposite of what Frollo says in the movie.
Set 1 foot outside, and you're mine.
He then abuses Quasimodo, ordering him to remove any impure thoughts he may have about Esmeralda. Totally not projecting! I love these lights that are on the stage floor that underlight the two of them, since it displays the intensity of the scene. Quite the inspired choice. Later that night, while thinking about her, Frollo stumbles upon a tavern with Esmeralda, Chopin... I typed Chopin, not O. Later that night, while thinking about her, Frollo stumbles upon a tavern with Esmeralda, Clopin, and their people dancing the night away. And we get our next best musical number, Tavern Song, aka Time Will Be Us. The tavern is called Le Pomme d'Ève, which is Eve's apple in French. It's oh so fitting, because in the Bible, Eve ate the forbidden fruit that gave her the knowledge of sin, just like how Frollo is peering through this tavern that's only feeding into his obsession with Esmeralda. This number was radically changed from La Jolla, where it's instead... It still kept the recurring Romani lyrics and melody. Ando pitosas, tail molpias, amare rodeas, tail molpias, which roughly means, into the tavern we go, and wine we drink, our money we give, and wine we drink. I listened to an interview from Theme Park University where Stephen Schwartz explained the first version worked okay in La Jolla, but after it closed, they had a better feeling of the show's tone. He and Alan Menken decided to change it, to which they rewrote it in just 15 minutes. And to that I say heck yeah. I much prefer the paper mill version anyway, and I'm so glad that's the one they stuck with for the cast recording. It's such a freaking bop, I'm obsessed with it. It's personally my favorite Disney Tavern song. That's right, all, 3 of them? Also in the La Jolla one, Phoebus' wingman Frederique takes interest in a Romani woman and tells Phoebus she has a sister, and that woman is Samantha Maisel, who played Florica earlier. Whoa! Anyway, Phoebus meets up with Esmeralda, they flirt for a little bit, then smooch.
Well, that was pleasant.
And Frollo is watching this entire time, stating,
I cannot bear to watch, and yet I cannot turn away.
Esmeralda runs off in a panic, but we do see she did enjoy the pleasant experience. We go back to Quasimodo trying to look for Esmeralda, hoping she comes back, and this leads to Heaven's Light. I'll just say right now, there are a few songs from the musical that I prefer over the movie version. This is the first one. This is another case of the two of them being practically identical, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about Michael Arden's voice being palpably stronger. And again, Tom Hulce is great in the movie. He brings in a delicate innocence to the song I enjoy, and you can make the argument that makes the contrast between Heaven's Light and Hellfire stronger, but I just enjoy listening to Arden's voice more, especially the way he belts at the very end. Bro, he's so good! Aside from that, the only change is tweaking the lyric, but suddenly an angel has smiled at me and kissed my cheek without a trace of fright to touch my face, since, yeah, she doesn't kiss him like in the movie. Now let's get to Hellfire. Woohoo! It's an absolute standout in the film, and as I said in my villain song ranking, it's not only my favorite villain song, but my favorite Disney song, period. Frollo's infatuation with Esmeralda makes him descend into complete madness as his lust consumes him whole. It's mind-boggling Disney allowed such a sequence to feature in one of their movies, and that makes it all the more special. In my opinion, it's one of the best scenes ever put to animation and film in general.
Now, what if I said it's my least favorite song from the musical? So, like, it's not bad.
It really just boils down to, I adore Tony Jay's performance to such a high degree that I don't think it can be matched or topped. Patrick Page's vibrato bugs me the most during the song, while Jay sounds much more silky smooth.
Like fire, hellfire.
Again, I haven't listened to Hadestown yet, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about and his vibrato fits better there. But when I've been so emotionally attached to one iteration for so long, I hear this one and I'm like, yeah, I'll stick with the movie version. Also, the visuals and blocking aren't all that memorable. Frollo doesn't move around too much, and obviously you can't have a gigantic inferno as a fireplace on a live stage with a smoky apparition of Esmeralda dancing about. But not even the red-hooded monks or coffin-shaped light encasing Frollo. He doesn't even take out her scarf. Even the Berlin production has an Esmeralda-like woman taunting him while he's singing. The sequence in the movie is a marvelous marriage of voice, music, and animation, and unfortunately the musical doesn't live up to it. Even though it's my favorite Disney song, I'm not all that upset about it, since it's not like they ruined it like I'm sure it would have been if this was adapted into a live-action remake. The musical does a ton of other things right and improves upon its source material, so it's just kind of like, it's not all that impressive, but oh well. After Hellfire, we get a brand new scene featuring the first ever appearance of King Louis XI in the Disney IP, with Frollo asking permission to protect the church from the evil Esmeralda. Not an absolutely groundbreaking scene or anything, but since Frollo is more intertwined with the church in this adaptation, I guess it's necessary. And here we get yet another fantastic original song, Esmeralda. This guy's announcing that anyone associated with her will be arrested and is a crazy bass singer. Listen to him. There's this one part Frollo asks Phoebus this question and he lies to his face.
I take it I can rely on you to deliver her to me. Absolutely, Your Grace.
Being completely unaware Frollo saw him and Esmeralda making out the night before. Hilarious. The manhunt for her begins, and instead of a mill, Phoebus, Frollo, and the soldiers wind up at a freaking brothel. Yeah, who knew one would show up in a Disney production as recent as 2014? Gotta keep that whole niche theater-going audience in mind, I guess. Phoebus stopped by at some point, which is crazy.
Ah, Captain Phoebus. Nice to see you again.
Yes, I know I said he's a womanizer, but at the end of the day, he's still a supporting character in a Disney story, no less, but it's just, I don't know, you know? Frollo probes the madam, but she denies ever harboring Esmeralda. I've already established my preference for Tony Jay, but there's this one part during the song in the cast recording where Patrick Page sounds like him, and it's pretty uncanny.
If you want your house to remain standing, give us the girl. I'm placing you and your family under house arrest until I get to the bottom of this.
Frollo orders Phoebus to burn down the brothel, but he hesitates as Esmeralda's plight convinces him otherwise. God Help the Outcast kicks in, and that's when Phoebus makes the decision to betray his superior. In La Jolla, In My Life was used instead, but I think removing the song and using a pre-existing one about social justice makes it all the more thematically concise. And when Phoebus douses the torch, it feels a bit wordy when he reprises In My Life, but it feels stronger when he sings God Help the Outcast instead.
I am just a fool. God help the outcasts, for nobody will.
It's more pleasing to the ear since God Help the Outcasts or Nobody Will sounds more confident than I am just a fool, I guess. Especially when he douses the torch on that emphasized word, will. It's also kind of funny that in a song called Esmeralda, this is her only line of dialogue in the entire thing on the cast recording.
No!
Just wanted to point that out.
Speaking of which, she comes in to save Phoebus since he was just ordered to be arrested for treason, but Frollo stabs him and frames her for it, which is directly taken from the novel. So now Esmeralda and Phoebus are on the run, and in La Jolla, Clopin helps them and is there to taunt Frollo, but he's absent in Paper Mill. Now Frollo is willing to burn down all of Paris to find them.
And whenever I'm looking for my cat Esmeralda around the house, I like singing this song when I'm walking around. Where is the girl called Esmeralda? The flames grow tall, as sharp as fleur-de-lis. All Paris burns for Esmeralda, and still it all comes down to her and me.
We get another trio of Frollo, Quasi, and Phoebus singing, and it sounds amazing. Then the rest of the cast and choir comes in, and it's even more amazing. Ugh, absolute musical theater.
Was Act 1 of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I like to think that's a pretty excellent place to end it. You think Hellfire would be the go-to stopping point, but since they made the manhunt for Esmeralda this grandiose musical number, it ends up being really fitting. I think it works really well as an alternative, and it gets people thinking what's going to happen next during intermission. Speaking of, I hope there's not an intermission here in the form of an ad break. That'd just be weird. Nah, let's jump into Act 2.
Act 2 kicks into high gear with entr'acte, literally intermission in French, which is music to help ease the audience back into the world of the story. It's basically a Latin medley of Heaven's Light, Someday, and a Gregorian chant that's heard later, and it's a great way to give the choir their own spotlight. Oh yeah, I don't know if you've noticed, but they're on stage during the entire show, and will stand when it's their cue to sing. Seriously, they're amazing, so they deserve their flowers. This part especially makes me levitate. Now that we're officially back in the story, Esmeralda brings a wounded Phoebus to the cathedral, and Quasi's pretty reasonably upset.
Why is he here?
He's been hurt! Quasimodo!
Musical Phoebus doesn't get a scene with Quasi to show he's not like the other soldiers, since she's not locked in the cathedral and doesn't need to look for her. So Quasi, assuming he's still an ally to Frollo, is understandable. He's more reluctant than in the movie, but he relents, and Esmeralda tells him that when he's recovered, they should find her at the Court of Miracles, the hiding place for Romani people. She gives him an amulet and states, when you wear this woven band, you hold the city in your hand. Esmeralda goes to leave, and it's around this point in the movie where the gargoyles sing A Guy Like You. It's a wacky comedic musical number that causes tone whiplash, and the story would have worked a million times better without it. Even though they made the tone darker in the musical, I hate to break it to you guys, they don't sing it! Instead, the Saints and Quasi sing Flight into Egypt, and
You mean like Saint? What's your name again?
Saint Aphrodisius, the Bishop of Basil.
Yeah. And before you say that's too goofy for the musical, that's actually what the statue of the saint looks like at Notre Dame. Yes, it does look silly, and it teeters on being tonally uneven like what you'd find in the movie, but there's just enough camp in it I end up kind of liking it. They do a neat illusion with him taking his head off and on, and you know what? Yeah, that's cool. They switched it up from La Jolla, where he was introduced in the stained glass window that came apart so we could directly interact with Quasi.
I was beheaded.
Also, Esmeralda comes with Phoebus and gives him the amulet after the song, but I prefer all this happening before the song since it makes Quasi's motivation stronger. In La Jolla, he's like, I'll go find Esmeralda and bring her to the cathedral to protect her, but in Paper Mill, he has a stronger incentive to find Esmeralda since she entrusted him to take care of Phoebus, while also giving him the amulet, which is a tangible object to lead him to where she's hiding. Out of curiosity, I looked to see if St. Aphrodisius was related to aphrodisiac, because it's one of those words I always heard but never knew the meaning, and nope. The word derives from the Greek goddess Aphrodite, and seeing how she's the goddess of love, I guess that makes sense. I do really like the song. St. Aphrodisius was brought up earlier at the beginning when Frollo was teaching Quasi about the saints of Notre Dame, and it parallels what's going on in the story since the actual saint helped the Holy Family, baby Jesus, Mary, and Joseph on their flight into Egypt since the Roman King Herod was hunting down Jesus to kill him. Sound familiar? Eventually, Aphrodisius was executed by a mob by beheading, and is now calmly depicted carrying his own head. Flight into Egypt is no rhythm of the tambourine or thymol BS, but you know, it could have been worse. Aphrodisius and the other saints help Quasi figure out the meaning of the amulet so he and Phoebus can go meet Esmeralda at the Court of Miracles.
It's the city seen from above.
We get some more of that great underlighting that gives Quasimodo this nice glow as he vows to save Esmeralda. I think it goes without saying I much prefer Flight into Egypt over A Guy Like You. The song might have functioned well as a good catchy musical number I could sing along to if it didn't have the surrounding context of coming just minutes after.
I'll find her if I have to burn down all of Paris.
Got a certain something more.
You're racist, kid.
Flight into Egypt also has stronger justification to be in the narrative, since the saints help Quasi solve the mystery of the amulet, and that propels the story forward, as we'll see soon, as well as that Quasi himself plays a role in the deciphering, since he's the one who realizes it's a map. Meanwhile, A Guy Like You is just the gargoyles getting Quasi's hopes up, going, "Hey, we think Esmeralda likes you," to her coming in like, "No," 2 minutes later. At its core, Flight into Egypt is still a lighthearted, if comedic song, sung mainly by Quasi's conscience, but it plays a critical role in helping him get to where he needs to go next. I guess the singing woke up Phoebus, but Frollo's on his way and we get some wonderful physical comedy from Quasi.
Quasimodo! Is something troubling you?
Traveling? No.
Michael Arden's so freaking good, guys. We also get this really nice dramatic beat with the saints narrating his inner dialogue when Frollo interrogates him, asking if he knows where Esmeralda is with the bells of Notre Dame melody.
And for the very first time in his life, he told a lie.
Superb. That's Samantha Maisel again who sang that last part, and her being Quasi's mother adds some nuance to that line. It actually successfully convinces Frollo and Quasi gets away with it. In the movie though...
You idiots!
Poor Quasi. However, Frollo is told about the location of the Court of Miracles, so now Quasi and Phoebus must hurry and warn Esmeralda and her people before it's too late. Another thing I think the musical improves upon is their dynamic with them begrudgingly working together.
I have to find Esmeralda. How can you possibly? You can hardly speak.
You can barely walk.
I'm telling you guys, he's amazing. Even though the musical is darker, there still has to be moments of emotional levity to put the audience at ease, so let's just say...
I'm losing to a bird!
The musical does it better. Unfortunately, the paper mill version removed a good chunk of that good banter from La Jolla so he could get into that mini rest and recreation reprise faster, but I miss the dialogue.
Well, what does she tell you?
When you wear this woven badge,
You hold the city? Makes no sense!
Rewatching this now in a post-Barbie world, he's definitely radiating Kenergy here, and I love it. He and Quasi silently make their way through the dark, deserted streets of Paris, until they finally stumble across the fabled Court of Miracles, with Clopin there to greet them with the death sentence. And here we get this song, The Court of Miracles, which takes a much more different approach than the movie, where it has a much slower tempo and it's mostly sung by Clopin instead of Clopin and a chorus.
Maybe you've heard of a terrible place where the scoundrels of Paris collect in a lair. Maybe you've heard of a terrible place where the scoundrels of Paris collect in a lair.
And if I gotta be honest, I prefer the musical version. Eric Lieberman is doing fantastic as always, and I love the new verse they put in at the end. It's always sad when a life's at its finish, I have to admit to a bit of a pang, but we must protect at all cost our secret. It's our lives are yours, so you're going to hang. He adds so much character into those couple lyrics, particularly,
It's always sad when a life's at its finish, I have to admit to a bit of a pang.
and it's another way he's neck and neck with Paul Candel. However, both Clopins are very ecstatic to put people to death without a fair trial, which is a bit yikes. Like in the movie, he states,
"We find you totally innocent, which is the worst crime of all."
While in the musical, it is more out of necessity.
It's our lives are yours!
Esmeralda stops the hanging just in time. The two give their warnings, which convinces Clopin to agree people should start packing up their things. He states this line that holds a twinge of tragedy.
I thought we'd have had a few years here at least.
The Romani are traditionally a nomadic group, but since they've been persecuted for so many centuries and in so many countries, it really is heartbreaking they once again have to move out of a place they thought was their safe haven, even if they still face ridicule on a day-to-day basis. Clopin invites Esmeralda to join them since she's a newcomer to the city, and since Phoebus is no longer a soldier, he wants to go with her. This leads to In a Place of Miracles.
In a place of miracles,
Believe it or not, this is a deleted song from the movie. It shares the same core idea, Phoebus and Esmeralda believing they're made for each other, but the reason why it got removed was because it took too much focus away from Quasimodo. And yeah, when you see the couple riding on a unicorn in an imaginary forest, you can't help but think, what are we doing here?
See my face, always laughing. That's just part of the part I play.
This was a good call. The song's really schmaltzy and it's improved tenfold in the musical. How, you may ask? They combined this song with the reprise of Heaven's Light, which is just a stroke of genius. Esmeralda and Phoebus confess their love in front of Quasimodo, not when she brings him to the cathedral and they make out in front of him, but instead here, and it makes for a much stronger emotional impact. Especially when their melodies start overlapping and it reveals the tragedy and the contrast of falling in love and being heartbroken. Esmeralda sings, "I've been certain that my life would be spent alone," while Quasi sings, "No love will be returned to one who's born to live alone." But my favorite one is when Esmeralda and Phoebus sing, "No more need for a heart of stone," and then Quasi freaking sings, "Better to have a heart of stone." Phoebus viewed women as part of his vested recreation, and Esmeralda's had to put guards up since she's been treated so poorly her entire life, but because they found each other, they grow as a result of that, while Quasi's dreams of being loved have been completely shattered, and that accumulates into even stronger emotions in a later musical number that I'm trying so hard to not go off on a tangent and yap about, but we'll get there. These melodies crescendo in the ensemble lamenting that they have to leave a place they thought was their home yet again, and I especially love Clopin's solo here.
Could there be a country kinder to our race?
It holds genuine sentiment because even though the story takes place in 1482, Romani people still might be asking that question today. In World War II, anywhere from 220,000 to 1.5 million were killed in concentration camps, and today they still endure stereotyping and harassment primarily in Europe. There's so much more in between and beyond that, so I highly recommend checking out Florian on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, since he's Romani himself and gives lots of great insight. I hope I'm not coming off as too preachy. This is just an aspect of the Hunchback of Notre Dame as a whole that I believe is barely looked into, especially here in the States. But back to the musical, the song ends with the rhythm of the tambourine melody, which is a nice way to tie the themes back with the song from earlier. After having followed Quasimodo and Phoebus, Frollo storms in with his guards and we get a rare sarcastic moment from him.
Spare Phoebus, please take me!
No, take me instead! Oh, how noble you two are. Take them both away.
They get arrested, Quasi is sent back to the bell tower, and we get justice in Paris. It's a very brief song expositing that Esmeralda will be burned at the stake in the town square, but since it uses the bells of Notre Dame motif, I really like it, so sue me. Frollo meets Esmeralda in prison to give her the whole choose me or the fire ultimatum, and this was actually going to be a scene in the movie, but it was decided having him ask her this while she's tied up to the pyre would make for better pacing, and I think that was a good move in that case, but this added scene works well in the musical, especially since it's just the two of them in the scene. It feels more intimate, so it ups the ante. This is when Frollo reveals he's kept the scarf, and it's ew. I like that we get to see Esmeralda in the position of her directly asking him, why me? But unfortunately it gives him a chance to paint himself as a victim, so double ew.
I will save you, sorceress, and raise you up to holiness.
Frollo brings Phoebus in so he and Esmeralda can share their last words with each other.
Unless, of course, you change your mind.
Ugh. Soon after, Frederick comes to take Phoebus away, but offers to come back at dawn instead. Kind of wish they kept those extra lines of dialogue he had in La Jolla to make this moment more impactful in Paper Mill, since Phoebus' change of heart changes his, especially with how Phoebus calls him his friend, even though we've barely seen them together throughout this production, but oh well. This leads to the somber ballad Someday. But there's some backstory behind the song. It was originally written during the movie's production and it was going to be Esmeralda's song when she's in the cathedral for the first time, but it was decided that it was too grand and the directors wanted a song more intimate and personal.
Someday my fight will be won then.
So they went with God Help the Outcast instead.
Children of God.
However, they didn't want to get rid of the song entirely, so it got the cheesy 90s pop ballad treatment and was used as the end credit song. God Help the Outcast is a much better fit, but having Someday woven into the musical's narrative by having Esmeralda sing it when she's at her lowest point is another stroke of genius. The song is about her wanting the world to be a better place without evil and injustice, but she knows that day won't come until long after she's gone, hence the word someday. In the live version, I love how her anger comes through while she's singing.
A day of justice.
Esmeralda's been my favorite Disney character for so long, and it's so fascinating to see her in such a vulnerable state in this iteration, how she acknowledges her mortality and how she knows and is willing to die before she ever submits her body, life, and maybe most importantly dignity to Frollo. Her crumbling to her knees at the end of the chorus makes it worse, and it absolutely breaks my heart. Having Phoebus come in to sing as a duet is also a nice creative choice, since even though Esmeralda is carrying most of the despair on her shoulders, having him there gives an air of hope to the song by having him comfort her. I like the movie version enough and would listen to it during my countless rewatches of the movie during middle and high school, but it was near the end of high school where I listened to the musical and its version of Someday more often. This was in 2020 after all, with people wanting justice following the murders of victims like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. It's 2026 and I'm still listening to the song, wondering when that someday will come. By having the song exist within the narrative, sung by a character wanting nothing but the best for her people, its themes of justice are much more prevalent and hit harder as a result compared to how vague it comes across as an end credits song sung by disembodied voices. Seeing the face and knowing the context matters, so that's why I think Someday is a standout song in the musical. We move on to the shortest song on the cast recording, While the City Slumbered, with a duration of a mere 24 seconds, and according to Spotify is the only one that hasn't been streamed in the millions. Only 7,000? Really? It serves the same purpose as Justice in Paris, detailing Quasimodo staying awake before Esmeralda's execution. This time we're using the Out There melody. Again, I really like it, but this is when we get to an even bigger standout musical number. Michael Arden's best performance in the musical, Made of Stone. For the longest time, Rhythm of the Tambourine was my favorite from the musical, but now I've decided it's this showstopper. Despite the Saints' and Gargoyles' encouragement to save Esmeralda, Quasimodo shoots them down, still feeling heartbroken, blames them for the false hope they put into him, and proclaims he would be better off if he were made of stone like them. The movie does a better job depicting him being restrained, especially with how he tears down the pillars later. So seeing him in the musical with a single rope wrapped around his ankle that looks like it can be easily taken off is a bit goofy, but his blocking should match the emotions he's experiencing, so I think giving him enough mobility to wave off the ensemble is a good choice in the end. They decide to leave him alone as they take off their gray robes, representing them leaving his consciousness and transforming into townspeople in front of our very eyes. The musical also manages to turn one of the Gargoyles lines from the movies into an incredibly powerful moment.
After all, we're only made out of stone.
We just thought maybe you were made of something.
I love this last part of the song when Quasimodo laments, "Now I'm on my own, never again to wonder what's out there," since there's this classic tragic Greek hero feeling to it, like Oedipus, but you know, without all the incest and eye gouging. Actually, this entire last verse is just straight up poetry. Stephen Schwartz and Alan Menken were burning in hellfire complimentary with how incredible this is. And then Michael Arden holds that last note for like 10 seconds and oh my gosh. I brought up that underlighting earlier because it's used to such great effect at the end of the song here. It's such a small touch, but it makes the staging of this production all the more dramatic. The Paper Mill production is very aware of how powerful this number is because they have Michael holding on to that last moment for almost 30 seconds while the audience erupts into applause and cheers. Good, because he deserves it. This brings us to the finale, fittingly titled Finale. Frollo gives Esmeralda one more chance to save herself and give herself to him. One added part that I like in the Berlin production was her also being asked to apologize, but she says doing that would imply she was wrong, and she stands by what she has done since she was doing the right thing by standing up to Frollo. They removed that in the English language productions since I guess it would have slowed down the momentum a bit. Frollo asks her what her answer is, with a delightful touch of him touching her arm, and she spits on him in response. Queen behavior. But when Frollo executes the order, she starts screaming and crying, and it adds another side to her I haven't seen before. If Quasi didn't go and save her, I would've. Quasi makes his way down the bell tower, and yeah, it's not as sweeping and grandiose as it is in the movies, since it's just him pretending to look like he's tracking down this massive cathedral. But there is this brief moment he and Florica make eye contact, and oh, like she's watching him from heaven or something. Ah! Quasi saves Esmeralda, does his iconic Frollo orders the soldiers to break down the doors of Notre Dame, and since he's the archdeacon of the church, he makes the conscious choice to ignore the laws of sanctuary. It adds a layer of nuance compared to his animated judge counterpart. Clopin helps Phoebus escape as they both rally the Parisians to fight back against Frollo. And as I alluded to earlier, Phoebus proclaims one of my favorite lyrics in the entire musical.
Last year he said, someday, maybe.
He always says someday, never today.
Someday your patience will find me.
Mwah, so freaking powerful. Quasimodo hurls huge stones and wooden beams to protect himself and Esmeralda, and the last move he makes is pouring an entire vat of molten lead onto the crowd below, and it looks really impressive. Quasimodo rejoices and tells Esmeralda the good news, and we get a reprise of Top of the World.
Two friends enjoying this beautiful morning.
Quasi then makes a suggestion, and I'll just let the scene play out.
Stay inside here forever.
I don't think forever. You're such a good friend, Quasimodo.
And your friend.
This is a Disney production. She's obviously not dead. Frollo unfortunately makes his way into the bell tower and has the audacity to bring that scarf with him. Quasimodo states that there's no sanctuary without Esmeralda, and this is how he finally stands up to his adoptive father, and biological uncle, mind you, once and for all, by straightening his posture and telling him the wicked do not go unpunished. Woo! Go Quasi, go! It's here where you realize just how amazing Michael Arden's physicality is in this musical. Maybe that's why the productions could run for only so long. The poor guy is hunched over to half his height for most of it. Quasi slams the door, which is an absolute power move, and, just like in the novel, he grabs hold of Frollo, raises his two huge hands, and with a great bellow throws his master over the edge of the roof into the abyss below. They even have a fake body slam onto the stage floor. Holy crap! So yeah, fed up with the 20 years of abuse and torment from his parental figure, Quasimodo outright murders Frollo.
You don't want to hurt me.
Ooh, chills. The fake body is a morbid touch, but I kinda prefer the Berlin version where it looks like Frollo was actually hanging off the roof. And seeing how much Scott Schwartz loves his projections in the Prince of Egypt musical, I'm surprised he didn't use them here, but at the same time I think that's for the best. I don't know, the way Frollo falls is just some of the ensemble picking him up and going, whee! But a fact's a fact. Quasimodo kills him. It's crazy they kept something like that from the novel. I don't know if you can get any more accurate than that.
Go. Go.
Yep. This may be a Disney production, but Esmeralda's dead. She's dead. Dead. In the novel, it's by hanging, so even though here it's by smoke inhalation, she's still dead, which is insane. The first Jacques I mentioned earlier, who's from the novel, tortures Esmeralda until she falsely confesses into stabbing Phoebus, to which he gets her imprisoned and later sent to her death by hanging. But in this specific adaptation, there is a reason why the musical went this route, and it comes from Der Glockner von Notre Dame. According to the German translator Michael Kunz, he was campaigning for it. There was a feeling that the audience would be depressed if Esmeralda dies. I feel that a European audience would see this as a very romantic ending. Two lost souls finally find each other. People will cry, but they'll be moved. The producers wanted to see how preview audiences would react before making the final decision, and seeing how it's even in the English language productions, I guess it was well received. Like I said earlier, I listened to the soundtrack before watching the musical, so when I found out Esmeralda died and Quasimodo killed Frollo, it absolutely shook me to my core. Even though I knew that's what happens in the book, I just didn't know it was possible to go that far in a Disney production. And when these are similar versions of characters you love and adore, it feels like it changes your outlook on its source material. They add this sequence that makes the situation all more tragic and stylized. Quasi scoops up Esmeralda's lifeless body and gently places it down center stage. An ensemble member steps up, and like what Quasi did at the very beginning, puts black paint on her face and contorts her body, and one by one, others follow suit, revealing that everyone is flawed and has a mix of good and evil inside of them. Esmeralda's spirit slowly rises and she walks up stage toward heaven, but before she leaves, she looks back at Quasimodo, who's reaching out towards her. You can't really see her during this, but Florica's spirit is up on the balcony repeating the Latin chant we heard at the very, very beginning. Olim Deus accelere, hoc seculum splendidum, accelere fiat venire olim, which translates to, once long ago, God arrived. In this age of brightness, he will come again. Perhaps meaning that although Esmeralda has left this world, there will be many more like her in the centuries to come who will fight for justice and equality. Samantha Maisel's voice is immaculate, and paired with that violin, it creates something completely out of this world. It's so beautiful, and the fact that it's Quasimodo's mother singing this makes it all the more touching. Quasi turns around, once again transforming in front of our very eyes as he corrects his posture and his face paint has mysteriously disappeared. He breaks the fourth wall and joins the ensemble as a narrator, which is yet another addition to this production.
Years later, in the crypts below Notre Dame, there were discovered two skeletons, one of which held the other in its embrace. The first was that of a woman, with a woven band around her neck. The second was that of a man whose spinal column was crooked. When they tried to detach the skeleton he held in his arms, he crumbled to dust.
So if you thought this couldn't get any more darker or book accurate, Quasimodo ends up dying of starvation being curled up next to Esmeralda's corpse. Oh, this musical is something else. It's completely absent in La Jolla and even the cast recording, but it was a very last-minute addition to the paper mill production. Scott Schwartz got the idea right before Tech Week, which are the last few rehearsals where everyone's in costume with proper lighting and sound and stuff, which is crazy to hear. When Quasimodo finishes, Clopin comes on stage with his face adorning a brushstroke of paint, singing another one of my favorite lyrics in the musical. Morning in Paris, a new day appears, sing the bells of Notre Dame, ending the tale of your poor balladeers in the bells of Notre Dame. I love this genius annotation that points out the use of the word morning. Yes, it's echoing the opening song, but here, the word morning can also be perceived as its homophone morning. While a new day is dawning in the city, there is also mourning for the destruction of the city, as well as Quasimodo's own mourning for the two most important people in his life. Crazy how a single word can have so many layers beneath it. I also just love his vocal inflections, especially in that last half.
Ending the tale of your poor balladeers.
His voice just oozes with charm. Quasi takes off his hunchback and shawl, which in turn makes him look more man than monster, and the company repeats the thesis of the story.
What makes a monster and what makes a man?
While the movie does ask the question at the very end, its main thesis is,
who is the monster and who is the man?
For the longest time I preferred the who question since I like how Paul Candell sang it, but I think now I prefer what since the musical posits that the world isn't so black and white. Quasimodo idolized Esmeralda and was devastated when she didn't reciprocate the feelings he had towards her, but he learned how to value her friendship. Phoebus and Jehan played fast and loose with women and alcohol, but learned the error of their ways, one of whom was on his deathbed. Esmeralda had trouble letting herself get emotionally attached to others because of her tumultuous upbringing, but was able to fall in love with Phoebus. Frollo had genuine care and love for his brother, but when he was left to take care of the last remnant of him, the thing that he named Quasimodo, as well as that his resentment for the Romani festered until it became a toxic amalgamation that he projected onto Esmeralda. The movie proposes that someone who may seem a man could end up being a monster, and someone who may seem a monster could end up being a man, while the musical states yes, but there's a mix in everyone and everything, light and dark, foul and fair. As Frollo puts it at the very beginning,
we are all born sinners.
It's articulated beautifully with the earlier lyrics. The world is cruel, the world is ugly, but there are times and there are people when the world is not. And at its cruelest, it's still the only world we got. Phoebus, Esmeralda, and Frollo are the last ones to come out on stage, also with face paint on their faces. The cast belt the bells of Notre Dame motif one final time, and they get a standing ovation they oh so rightfully deserve. And that's the end of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. So if you haven't asked yourself this question throughout, chances are you might be asking it now. Well, it's complicated. The very first English adaptation of Der Glockner von Notre Dame was staged in 2013 by the King's Academy in West Palm Beach, Florida. Which is a high school? Are y'all seeing this? They were chosen by Disney themselves, and it was being workshopped for a possible Broadway run. So yes, it was at one point considered. Sigh. First, let's get a rather popular theory out of the way, that Frozen was chosen over it. The timeline somewhat matches up with it premiering on Broadway in early 2018, and like what could have been in Berlin in the 90s with The Lion King, it's the more obvious lucrative choice. I can't find any actual evidence to this, but since it's no secret Disney is so desperately money hungry, it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility across the executives' minds with how much darker Hunchback is to Frozen. But Stephen Schwartz seems rather okay it didn't transfer. According to him in a 2015 interview with the San Diego Union Tribune, he said, "What one wants for any show is for it to have a continued life, and that the two best shows I've done have never played New York," referring to Hunchback and Children of Eden, which had also played at the Paper Mill Playhouse about 2 decades earlier. In that Theme Park University interview I mentioned earlier, he also said there were no discussions on bringing it to New York, so it's possible sometime in between the King's Academy to Paper Mill production timeline the decision was made. But what is the actual reason why the Hunchback of Notre Dame didn't make it to the big stage? How did Lindsay Ellis put it?
Union reasons. I'll just leave it at that. Union stuff.
Yeah. Let's uncover what that really means. As I mentioned before, the production features an approximate 30-member choir who were on stage for the entirety of the musical, since having that many people shuffle on and off stage so often would grind the pacing to a halt. Both Menken and Schwartz believed that having them perform live on stage was vital for the musical to reach the level of emotional impact the film had. And yeah, you saw them, it works wonders. But just like in Hollywood, where if you want to be part of major blockbusters, you have to be part of a union, and it's no different on Broadway. Since you have to pay the main actors, the ensemble, the orchestra, and backstage crew members for their work multiple nights a week, having to additionally pay each and every member of a 30-something choir who were on stage for that long and that often would make the operating costs skyrocket. Disney would probably be lucky to break even every night with ticket sales. Yes, I know Disney has money to burn, but it is understandable. And with their other musicals running for as long as they have, that debt would have easily piled up. So while you're not able to see it, you are able to hear it. The cast recording was released on January 22nd, 2016, just a day before my 13th birthday, where it debuted at number 1 on Billboard's cast album chart, ending the 17-week run of, get this, Hamilton. It also reached its peak at number 17 on the top album sales chart, as well as number 47 on the Billboard 200, which is for most popular albums overall. While I've mainly been focusing on the live performance, I really can't stress enough how fantastic the cast recording is. Simply incredible. Speaking of the live performance overall, I have my gripes here and there, but it really is a wonderful production. It combines elements from both the Disney movie and original novel to create something wholly unique, and it's hard to imagine the company ever tackling themes of this caliber again. Like I said before, Michael Arden is far and away the best vocalist in this production. He actually didn't know Quasimodo was deaf from all that bell ringing until he read the novel to prepare for the role, so he's deaf when he's speaking and even occasionally uses sign language throughout, but sings clearly as it is his way of ignoring his disability and how he quite literally doesn't see his deformity. Having to say a hearing actor speaks deaf is a bit yikes, but there have been productions elsewhere, like in Sacramento and Seattle, where deaf actors John McGinty and Joshua Castile were casted as Quasimodo respectively, and one of the Saint actors sang for them while they signed, which is a really awesome interpretation. So while this production could have used this as an opportunity to hire a deaf and or disabled actor, I still think Michael Arden gives a spellbinding performance, especially with that physicality of his. And I won't discredit that he has had experience in the deaf theater community, like directing what would eventually become the acclaimed Broadway revival of Spring Awakening, which had a cast of both deaf and hearing actors, so that's really cool. Esmeralda is my favorite character in the musical, with Cia Renee being the second best performer. I've yet to see or even hear about a Romani actress be casted as her in any Hunchback adaptation ever, which will be cool to get someday, but I also believe she gives an incredible performance with what she was given by giving more insight into how she's viewed by Frollo. Seeing my comfort character in such vulnerable states is very disturbing, but fascinating nonetheless. Patrick Page is overall quite good as Frollo, particularly in scenes with Quasi or Esmeralda, and is able to capture the spine-chilling presence his animated counterpart had well. Andrew Szymanski is also very solid as Phoebus, with some great comedic moments and vocal performances, as well as Eric Lieberman, who I think also does a nice job encapsulating Clopan's vibrant but also mischievous presence. And a special shout out to Samantha Maisel, who may or may not be the main character or anything, but her voice is just that heavenly. She's awesome. Just about all the musical songs integrate perfectly with the movie songs, and even the brief ones I wasn't a huge fan of were removed for Paper Mill, so it ends up making an absolute top tier soundtrack. I think I have a good blend of which songs I prefer from the two adaptations. I prefer the movie's versions of The Bells of Notre Dame, out there, topsy-turvy, God Help the Outcast, and Hellfire, while I prefer the musical's versions of Heaven's Light, The Court of Miracles, In a Place of Miracles, Someday, and I guess the Bells of Notre Dame reprise. It's incorporated into the near 14-minute finale, so it's not a standalone song and they change a handful of lyrics, but you get what I'm saying. While I love musical theater, I'll confess that I'm not as well versed in it as I am in movies. I mean, I've yet to watch or even listen to so who knows if this opinion of mine will change, but at least for right now, I can say in full confidence that The Hunchback of Notre Dame is my favorite musical, and I believe it deserves its rightful place on Broadway.
Now what?
So while it hasn't made it on theater's biggest stage in the world, depending on where you live, there's a chance you might be able to catch a production of it. Since 2016, it's been making the rounds in various US regional theaters, and there's a number of them that you can watch in their entirety on YouTube. I haven't seen them yet, but I will eventually to see what kind of directorial and creative choices they make to differ from the one I'm so used to. However, I did go to a live college production back in 2022. Let me tell you, the alternate universe Olivia, who decided not to take a gap year after high school and decided to enroll in this college, must have had the time of her life. Even if I wasn't in the cast, it was still awesome to watch. I was in the front row and everything.
I'm taking a video.
I was curious to know which version they were going to stick with, and with the removal of In My Life, the updated Time Old PS, and that Quasimodo dies at the very end let me know they went with Paper Mill. So based on my experience of that and listening to the cast recording, I believe the Paper Mill production is the definitive iteration of Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, a new musical, and is the one that is being sold for regional stage rights. As I mentioned earlier, some productions have incorporated deaf actors to play Quasimodo, while others collaborate with local choirs to achieve the large-scale musical demands. It's also played in Scotland, Australia, Austria, Wales, and again in Germany with the set design from the American production. It was even on West End in London as recently as last summer in 2025 as The Hunchback of Notre Dame in concert, featuring Christina Alato as Esmeralda. If that name sounds familiar, she was Zipporah in the West End production of The Prince of Egypt, and in my review for the musical, I literally drew comparisons between her introductory song Dance to the Day and Rhythm of the Tambourine, so whoa, that's crazy. It was only performed 3 times and that's it, but there's emphasis on the in-concert part. It's not staged like a traditional stage musical, it's very stripped down in terms of costume and set design, with more emphasis on the orchestra and the actors singing the songs instead of acting for theater. There's also a Japanese production that will be premiering very soon at the Shiki Theater Company, which is one of the largest theaters in Japan, and gives me all the more reason to take a trip there. It premiered in 2016, but I guess they're reviving it, so cool. When it comes to a Broadway revival, Alan Menken stated in a What's on Stage interview in 2025 that he'd love to see it, and he expects it will at some point. We even have an update from him as recent as this June. On the 21st, he posted on Instagram celebrating Hunchback's 30th anniversary, stating, "Our stage musical is out there, and will be recognized worldwide someday soon. Let's make it happen, Disney." So, needless to say, he is very passionate about the work he did on this movie and believes it should be more recognized by the company. It's not like he's in the room with the suits when it comes to decisions like these, but it's at least somewhat hopeful, especially because the original movie has been more widely regarded as an underappreciated classic in the last decade or so. After all, in 2019, it was announced there was going to be a live-action remake that Josh Gad was attached to produce, but it's been shelved due to debate on how to properly handle the representation and heavy themes, which, yeah, I think is for the best. I can't see shots like these looking better in live action than animation anyway. So what do I really want out of all of this? Well, a pro shot would be nice. I doubt you can film one now with the original US cast, since people like Michael Arden, Andrew Simonsky, and Sierra Renee have aged out of their roles, but if this does get a Broadway revival, you can film that and put it on Disney+. Seriously, with Hamilton's absolutely exploding with success, how have pro shots not become more of an everyday thing? In a well-ordered universe, we would have had it by now. But I suppose for now, I'll just have to continue watching/listening to the movie and musical on a loop, and hope that'll get the Broadway treatment it deserves. One day, someday. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, hype, and join my Patreon to support me, and I will see you later. Okay, bye!
Wait, hold on. Are you ready, kids?
Unfortunately, Disneyland, this is about the only Hunchback wreck you can... What was I gonna say? Your mom.
You bought this girl, breathe through that monologue.